Hi, so it's December 3rd today and we're in the backyard garden and we've done the final garden cleanup because there's going to be a big snowstorm tonight and it might not be like snow on the ground for the entire winter, but it's a good sort of deadline to get it all finished. We've got some raised beds here. Pulled everything out of that. I pulled carrots out of here the other day. I just left the carrot tops on the beds because they'll just decompose. You might as well add more organic matter. And then I took some straw and just covered all the beds up. So that'll just make it easier in the spring. Pull that off and clean it up. It'll keep any soil from eroding away as well over the winter. In this bed, I put down some row cover. I planted radishes in here and cilantro. If we get some warm temperatures in the next month, they might get a little bit bigger. There's some row cover in the bed over here as well. This has Swiss chard in it. Again, the Swiss chard's not going to grow very fast this time of year. We've harvested most of what's edible off of that. It can withstand pretty cold temperatures, so we're just going to leave it in there and hope that we can get some more harvest off of it later. That might not be till March, that might be later in December. We'll sort of check it every once in a while and see. So this area is where we grew artichokes this year. It was a pretty wet and cloudy year, so we didn't get really good artichoke chokes out of them. But artichokes are perennial in zones that are just south of us, so we're gonna try and see if we can overwinter the plants. Oh, there's one. They've got pretty big spiky leaves. They're a relative of the thistle and they have a great big long taproot. What we've done is taken more of this straw and just sort of loosely gathered it around with some leaves and some bean hulls that are here, just to sort of provide an insulating layer. The hope is that the roots will stay active enough that in the spring they'll start to grow again. That would be really fun. There's some asparagus in here. I also grew some verbenas as like a plant for pollinating insects. The birds will eat the seeds over the winter. Interestingly enough, we used some elderberry for a trellis here because we had trimmed back an elderberry. Elderberry has like a soft pith on the inside, and this is really cool. You can see in here, little insects have gone in there and used it as like a winter cavity. I'm not sure who's in there. Cavity nesting bees often use elderberries. So do different kinds of moths might chew in there and lay larvae. I do sort of a medium amount of garden cleanup every year depending on what it is. Things like these coreopsis that we grew just for flowers. There's some trailing oregano over here. There's some zinnias that have fallen down over there. I'm just gonna leave them. I'm just gonna let them compost. You can clean them up now or clean them up in the spring, but I feel like having that kind of ground cover is good. Keeps some amount of organic matter in the soil as well. A lot of things self-seed, which I'm into. The calendula that's here, it grows up all summer, and then every year, even though it's an annual, it just comes up from seeds. Cilantro does that, dill does that in different areas of the garden, and Johnny jump ups. These guys can be almost a nuisance. Do I see any? Here's one. They'll grow almost all year round, really. Like, as long as they're not covered in snow and frozen solid, as soon as the temperature gets above zero, they start blooming again. So I sort of let those naturalize all over the backyard as well, because they're nice to eat on salads or desserts, or just to have a little bit of color. In this area in the garden, we did protect a couple of these beds. So this bed has some Arctic kiwis in it. It has some grapes. They grow up over our pergola. And then it also has some perennial thyme. We just put a bunch of straw in here to try and protect it, just to sort of regulate the temperatures over the winter. And then this is a bed that had some collards in it. The collards are still green. We've been harvesting from them a little bit, but they're pretty much finished. There's also some kale and some arugula in here. We just put these sort of metal super hoops on them and then put some row cover over top and then reinforced it with wood. We've just sort of closed this up. We're just gonna leave it, check on it a couple times through the winter, see if anything's growing. The growth will really start to happen when the days get longer, sort of in February, March. At that point, we'll probably have a bed that we will be able to harvest from. It's neat because collards and kale are both biennial. As long as they don't die over the winter from the cold, they want to live a second year so they can flower and seed. This is sort of the food forest area. Over here, I've protected some blueberries. In the greenhouse, we've got spinach growing. The goal with the spinach is to harvest it again when the days start to get longer, February, March. Some of this is spinach that I grew inside. I transplanted it probably 2 or 3 weeks ago, and it's doing great. And then on this side, we've seeded spinach. So you can see that's coming up. I like to do some in both ways because then some of it's ready at different times than other times. Also, if the transplanting doesn't work, then you have the stuff that you seeded and vice versa. Back here we have a lot of parsley plants. Dug them up a few weeks ago, brought them in the greenhouse, keep them warm. I did the same thing with a few different perennial herbs. It's really nice to have perennial herbs in an unheated greenhouse like this because they'll start to be ready really early on. We've got some chives, we've got some of that English thyme. This is some Zatara oregano, and this is like a Greek climbing oregano. Over here, it looks pretty ragged right now, but it's alive. We've got some red vein sorrel, some more parsley, and then the other thing that's in here, it's a fig tree that has a central stalk and then it has 2 cordons that are growing off of it, and so we've buried that to try and keep that nice and warm over the winter. And then the other thing that's germinating in the greenhouse, you can see a lot of it. It's just these thin little cotyledons. It's everywhere. It's miner's lettuce or claytonia. It's a very hardy winter green. It self-seeds all over the place. I planted it first 6 or 7 years ago, and it's just sort of a self-sustaining thing. It's easy to pull out, so I kind of like letting it grow everywhere, and then I'll selectively pull it out as we go to keep it away from the spinach, but it's also delicious, and it grows really early. I love to grow mint, but it spreads all over the place, so I try not to put it in the garden. In here, I've got a pot that I grow mint in. Yesterday, I dug out half of it, and I put it in a pot, and I brought it inside. It's nice to have mint inside in the wintertime to use in cocktails and recipes. Apple tree espalier. The apple trees are dormant and we've almost lost all of their leaves. And then in here is a bed that doesn't get a lot of sun, so we've done different things in here over the years. This year we put some Brussels sprouts in. You can see there's some Brussels sprouts there. Really, you can leave those Brussels sprouts for quite a long time. I've even harvested them once for like a New Year's Day party. Just went out and you can just sort of flick them right off the vine, even when they're frozen solid. Then in here we've got the herb garden. We've got perennials in here, a lot of lemon balm, different things that'll start coming up in the spring, and a few gooseberry bushes as well. And that's about it for the garden cleanup.